As time went by after the Supreme Court's significant rulings during the late 1970s, money continued to flow into the political system. The stripped-down Federal Elections Campaign Act was not effective, and spending to influence elections became concentrated among a smaller and smaller segment of society.
But we get into the 1990s, and a number of donors and outside groups begin to get creative and to find ways, including actually political parties as well, find ways to get big money back into the game, even though there are all these new rules and restrictions that have been in place since the Watergate scandal.
Consistent with the history of election-related spending, donors supporting both major parties found elaborate ways to funnel more money into the process. This time, it was through soft money.
And one of the ways that the big money finds its way back into the system, at least through political parties, is through something called soft money. So soft money is money that's unregulated by federal laws.
Soft money is the campaign finance term for contributions that are made to a political party, but not earmarked for a specific candidate.
These contributions were not publicly disclosed until the 1990s. In the decades to come, involvement by corporations and unions vastly increased. By exploiting the soft money loophole, these organizations could avoid regulation. During a 10-year period, the amount contributed rose by more than 500%.
Soft money refers to all of the money that is outside of that system and that was unregulated.
So you could get very, very big donations going to the political parties in the form of these soft money donations.
The FEC created the soft money loophole in order to provide a way for the parties to finance party-building activities. The problem is that the parties now capitalize on these funds to win federal elections, and the size and source of these contributions has the appearance of corrupting the legislative process.
Because of soft money, what we have today is a system in which the very types of money that are supposed to be excluded from federal elections are instead playing an increasingly dominant role.
You would have corporations, other special interests giving huge sums of money to political parties. You'd have candidates raising the money on behalf of the political parties, but that wouldn't count for purposes of the contribution limits because it was outside of the system.
Soft money is a huge problem. In 1907, there's a law in the books that says corporations cannot give money directly to candidates. So guess what they do, folks? They give it to the party, and it's laundered through the party. 70% of both parties' money today comes from corporations, including the Democratic Party.
In the 1970s, congressional campaigns cost less than $100 million. In the following decades, spending exploded and surged to about $900 million by the turn of the millennium.
Outside groups also got creative. They discovered that you could get around some of the rules and the restrictions through something called issue ads.
Political parties were allowed to raise unlimited amounts from donors, as long as it was spent on quote-unquote party-building activities and generic advertisement, or issue ads.
But what the groups would do is they would put the face, the picture, the name of a candidate up for re-election or some other political candidate running for federal office, and they would describe, and usually in unflattering terms, their position on an issue.
Well, an issue advocacy campaign needs to have a call to action included in it. If you're running an issue advocacy ad, it must say, call Senator Thurber and please tell him to vote for a stronger Clean Air Act. Or call Representative Musser and please tell her to vote against the bad regulatory reform bill. It must have an explicit call to action where you're trying to ask citizens who are the viewers to contact their elected official to persuade them of something.
Which didn't say vote against Senator Smith, but came right up to the line and was clearly meant to influence an election and was clearly valuable to Senator Smith's opponent, right?
So regulation now distinguished between campaign ads and issue advocacy. Advertisement calling for the election or defeat of a candidate was subject to regulation. Issue ads, on the other hand, was unregulated. The reason being, their purpose was to educate the public about a political issue.
Issue advocacy cannot have what's called express advocacy. And I know it's confusing because it uses the word advocacy in it, but it's what the courts have called express advocacy, where you expressly advocate the election or defeat of any candidate.
But beginning with the 1996 election, the spending of soft money to affect federal campaigns became even more blatant when both political parties used tens of millions of dollars of federally illegal funds to finance TV campaigns that praised or criticized specific federal candidates by name and were in substance indistinguishable from candidate campaign ads.
In 1996, various groups utilized the issue ad loophole to flood the airwaves. The regulations only limited advertisement if it contained a specific set of words in order to separate educating the public from attempting to influence elections.
Now, to an untrained viewer, that looks very much like a campaign ad. They see the picture, let's say, of their senator. They see an ad that looks negative about that senator's position, but the ad carefully avoids language like vote for or vote against. So it's defined, instead of it being a campaign ad, it's defined as an issue ad.
The result was an increase in soft money spending by 275% from 2 years earlier. An Annenberg report found that more than 86% of so-called issue ads ran in '96 did name a candidate, and a majority attacked the financing party's opponents. These ads were clearly meant to influence voters, but not according to the legal definition, and were therefore not subject to regulation.
So Congress passed the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, also known as McCain-Feingold.
So the first problem is they got to fix the soft money problem, all this unregulated money that's going to political parties. So they closed the door to that. No more soft money for party building activities.
The other thing that the McCain-Feingold law did was it put in place new protections for the people and for our political system against corporate spending. Put in place a prohibition on corporations and others from giving unlimited sums of money to political parties, and prohibited candidates from soliciting that money because it brings with it that risk of corruption.
If you had it all to do over again, would you still go for McCain-Feingold?
Absolutely. You've seen the corruption in Washington. We have former members of Congress in federal prison. The approval rating of Congress is down around 11%.
The Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, as the name suggests, was an effort across party lines to restore public trust in the political process. It attempted to close the soft money loophole and redefine what an issue ad is.
It said, if you are a corporate entity and you're going to name a candidate in a few weeks before an election, that's an election ad. That is not necessarily an ad just to talk about public policy.
So that ads that look like campaign ads are actually treated like that. And so the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act tries to really plug at least those two major cracks in the modern campaign finance system.
After McCain-Feingold passed, some provisions were immediately struck down by the Supreme Court after a lawsuit from a U.S. senator who's very against campaign finance reform.
The law is immediately challenged by Mitch McConnell, our current Senate Majority Leader, and Mitch McConnell goes to court and loses. So in 2004, the court upholds the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. And to most reformers, they thought, well, this is it. The matter is settled. We've fixed the major problems with the law. There may be a few others, but this is a huge improvement from where we were at the end of the 1990s. And it seemed that campaign finance law was largely settled after the McConnell case in 2004. And then we get the Roberts Court, and then everything changes.